Last time we learned the easiest checkmate there is, queen and rook against king. The checkmate we're going to learn today is almost just as easy, two rooks against the king. What we want to do here is deprive the king of space, one rank at a time, and push the enemy king towards the 8th rank and checkmate. Right now we dominate the 3rd rank, meaning the enemy king can't go there because he would be in check. Ideally, we want the following to happen. We want the king to just move passively, and then we check him with the rook on the h-file. And as you can see, he can't go to the 3rd rank. He is in check on the 4th rank, meaning he has to move back to the 5th rank. The king moves. We do the same procedure. Now with the rook on the a-file. The black king is in check. He has to move. Again, he's in check. He has to move. He's in check. He has to move. He can't move here, right? He's in check here. He has to move to the 8th rank. And right now, the black king is in checkmate. This is the ideal world. It's not going to happen this easy, even though it is very easy. We're going to take a look at it right now. We're going to do just as before. Move the rook up to a3 and blocking the black's king from going down towards the 3rd rank. The king is going to move. Now the king will always go towards the closest rook because that's the one he wants to dislodge, or if you make a mistake, capture. The rook on the h-file goes to h4 and checks. So now we dominate here, and we do actually dominate here. The black king has to move to the 5th rank, right? And the black king moves to g5. And here a lot of people make mistakes. It's true that the rook on the h-file is dominating the 4th rank, right? And ideally right here you would want to check the king again with the rook on the a-file. The only problem is right now the rook on the h-file is not protected, and the black king can just take it. That's mistake 1. Mistake 2 is that you're getting cold feet and want to start protecting the rook that is being attacked with the other rook, like this. And right now the rook on the a-file is protecting the rook on the h-file, and vice versa. But the problem is that when you keep protecting your rooks, you're really not going to get anywhere. So what you want to do is move your rook to the other side of the board, the left side, and as far as you can without being on the same file as the rook on the a-file. You don't always have to check the enemy king, but what you're doing is preparing for your next push. The black king is going to move towards the rooks again, right? Hoping for a mistake. You check him again. Same thing as before. We dominate the 4th rank. We dominate the 5th rank with a check. The king has to move back, and usually towards the rooks. That's a check. Towards the rooks. That's a check. Towards the rooks. In our last video tutorial, we had a similar situation, but the queen was always behind the rook to protect it. And this was where the queen was, meaning that we could go down with this rook to the 8th rank and checkmate him. In this situation, we're back to the same thing as we were trying to avoid in mistake 1. The black king can just take the rook. So what we want to do instead is move the rooks to the other side of the board and as far away from the black king as we can get him. The king moves towards the second rook, and we move that rook to g7. The king comes back towards us, and as before, we dominate the 7th rank, and we didn't give that up when we moved the rook. And right now we use the rook on the h file to checkmate. King can't go here, and he's in check here, and if he has nowhere to move, he's in checkmate. Okay, last example. I like to visualize it by pushing the enemy king towards the 8th rank, but the same pattern works for depriving the enemy king for space when pushing the king towards the a file or the h file. We move the rook to the d file, and right now we are dominating it. The king can't cross that line. The king moves up towards our rooks. We move our other rook to the e file. The king has to be pushed further towards the h file. The king moves towards our rook. We move the rook as far down as we can get it. The king goes here, blocking off the path which we have here for the rook. The rook instead moves down to d3. King moves back towards the rooks. We have a check. He has to move back. We have one more check here. He's moving back. We move our rook up all the way to the 8th rank on the f file. King moves towards our other rook. We move the rook to g7. Point being, if we move the rook to d8, the rooks are protecting each other and we're not really going to get that far. King moves towards our rooks again, and right now he's in checkmate. We dominate the g file, and he's in checkmate on the h file. The reason I want you to move your rooks as far away as possible is because it takes the enemy king longer time to reach them again, and by that time you will be able to push the enemy king further towards your checkmate instead of once again moving them from one side of the board to the other. I hope I explained this in an understandable way, and practice makes perfect. Next time it's going to be king and queen against king. It's in the simple category, but a checkmate which is very important to learn. Until next time.